This morning in our practice run for tomorrow afternoon. So the title of my talk today is Relentlessly Positive, because I think that's what our industry needs to be in order to get its message across to the consumer and governments around the world. First, I'd like to start by acknowledging my sponsors, CBH Group and CSBP, over there in WA, for their generous support, without whom I wouldn't have been able to do my scholarship, but also their support of the Nuffield organisation as well. I'd also like to thank Nuffield Australia for the life sentence they've given me. So, a bit of background. I farm, as Ryan said, in Esperance, south coast of WA. It's a beautiful coastal town. We've got magnificent beaches, a great community, great place to live and farm. Agriculture there is fairly new. Most of the area was opened up in the 60s and 70s, so we're a sort of second generation area, so it's quite progressive and forward thinking, or we like to say that. So my farm's about 2,100 hectares and we grow cereals and canola. So the study topic that I chose took a little while to sort of distill it down. I guess it does with anything enough, it takes you a while to focus on what you want. What I wanted to do was to investigate the methods by which farmers and the agriculture industry in particular were engaging with consumers and government around the world in order to influence policy and also to re-engage with consumers. So this came about from an experience I had in 2012. I was campaigning for the state election in WA, running around the countryside as you do, a lot of miles, and getting calls from constituents from around the traps. And this one particular person phoned up one day while I was driving and asked a bit about my background in agriculture, what I did, but also asked me about, at that time, the live sheep and live cattle was topical. He asked me a bit about what I thought of live animal exports, and I sort of said, look, it's an important industry, it's a big part of agriculture, we've got a lot of strategies in place to make sure that animals are looked after and all that sort of thing. But he didn't like that, and so he wished me and all farmers the most heinous of deaths. It was a pretty full-on experience, I guess, going through that. But at the end of the day, I stopped and thought, why does he think that? What is it that has made him believe that agriculture is so evil, and what are we doing to change that mindset? So that was the catalyst, really, for me to apply for the scholarship in 2013 and to travel in 2014. So there are a few issues I wanted to cover around this space. In Australia today, according to branding expert Craig Davis, about 0.6% of the population is employed directly in agriculture. 100 years ago it was 14%. And in fact, between the years 2000 and 2012, the Department of Agriculture, Fisheries and Forestry reported a decline in employment in agriculture of about 40%. So there was a lot less of us doing the work than there was a few years ago. What does that mean? Well, we've also seen at the same time, throughout decades in Australia, an increase in urbanisation, more people living in cities, less people having a connection to farming. So we've got this growing disconnection from a community that is becoming increasingly urbanised. As a result of that, and coupled with this country's greater reliance on other industries for production, what we've also seen is that we've moved our voter base to the metropolitan area, so our ability to influence policy is also more difficult and more challenging. So we've got metropolitan-dominated parliaments, basically. All of this means that we, in agriculture and agribusiness, have less influence on policy and less of a connection with our consumers. It's no surprise that we also see a lot of small interest groups rallying to little causes that can be spread like wildfire through social media and other platforms. So we see all these people rallying against the evils of factory farming, for example, yet no one's out there really in a united way telling the story about what agriculture does. The very important point for me on this slide is that this problem is one for the whole of industry. It's not for the cattle farmers, it's not for the grain farmers, it's for all of us, it's for fishers as well. We all need to come together on this, which is probably going to be a challenge in this country. Just a few examples, I'm sure you've seen a few of these before, of some of those the messages that are getting spread out there by some of the interest groups. You know, we've got the floating ovens, Aussie sheep being baked alive in transit across the ocean, super trawlers and monsters, factory farming. The one on the top right is particularly interesting. It's a particular brand of food supplement you may have heard of called Isogenics. They have a little promotional video on their website which goes on to say that, and I quote, "We are poisoning our air, we are poisoning our water, and we are poisoning our food." And then it goes on to talk about pesticides being in all your foods, farmers poisoning their topsoils and sterilising the very medium which they grow their crops in. So all of these messages are out there, they're loud, people are hearing them. So for me, I took particular interest in a few organisations around the world. I travelled to the UK, USA, Germany and Belgium. In the UK I saw the NFU, in the USA the California Farm Bureau Federation, and an organisation called FNL in Germany. As well as that, there was a couple of other smaller entities that I saw that had some interesting programs. One of those was, for example, the California Ag Leadership Foundation. They have a program called the DC Exchange, where they take lawmakers and staffers out of Washington and they bring them out on farm. It's totally Chatham House rules. They're not allowed to, no media, no discussion about it, no publicity. They go out there and they talk to the farmers directly about what impact their policies are having on the ground. And they go back enlightened. These guys go back and actually, they believe it makes a big difference to the policy outcomes they're getting. So there are particular issues with groundwater and things like that. So that was a really interesting little program, and I don't think it would be too difficult to employ here. But I'll talk a bit more about the other ones. So in the NFU, I met with Gemma Fitzpatrick in Stoneleigh Park at the headquarters of NFU, and the British National Farmers Union, and she was the head of the media unit within the NFU. Now they're a very well-resourced organisation, got a lot of history, a lot of farmers in England as we know, so they've got that membership base, they've got that big capital resource behind them to be able to do a lot of stuff. A small team in the media department, but they have a dearth of information available to them. They're able to present it really well in all media formats, paper, TV and social media as well. The main thing that Gemma said to me was their mantra, and they have it written everywhere, is relentlessly positive. Everything they do is positive about agriculture. They don't tell a bad story about it. And I think that's helped build the credibility of British farmers in the community, and it's helping them reconnect slowly. One of the things that has come out of all of this for them, and it's probably, I think it's pretty important, is that they are now the trusted source for journalists and the media to go to. So when an issue arises related to agriculture, the media goes to these guys first to get information, which means they're getting the information you want them to get. They're getting the most up-to-date, the most complete, and the most modern view of agriculture. Unlike what we see in Australia many times, where we'll see the old tractor on the TV tearing up the ground, clouds of dust, and without offending anyone, the old farmer with a piece of straw hanging out of their mouth sort of thing. It's not a modern view of agriculture. This gives them that ability to do that. So some of the programs like the Back British Farming or Trust the Tractor brand that they've done are also helping consumers to understand where their food comes from. So I was very impressed with what they did for a small team. I also went on to see the California Farm Bureau Federation in California, in Sacramento. In particular, that's a big organisation, but the particular thing I focused on there was what they were doing related to education. So they have a program, and Stephanie Echeverria, who you see there, heads it up. It's called the California Foundation for Agriculture in the Classroom. What they do, and literally it's two people, but they prepare teacher-ready materials for classrooms. So these guys can walk in, deliver this stuff to teachers and to schools. The teacher can walk in, pick up a lesson plan, and everything's there. All about agriculture. You might be doing a maths lesson, but it's related to counting eggs or whatever it is. So the kids are learning where their food comes from. Really, really clever program. They make it very, very easy for the teachers to do. We all know teachers are very busy people. So this little program, whilst it's small, it's starting to creep into the likes of San Francisco and other cities, even though it's only a couple of people running it. And I was particularly impressed with the materials they produced and the engagement they got from the kids. One of the things that also happened out of this, or is happening out of this, is that those kids, of course, are going home and telling mum and dad, hey, did you know strawberries are grown here, or this is how many tomatoes we grow in California, and these little things of getting through to the parents as well. So a great little program, and particularly interesting little tool that I think we could use in Australia. But for me, the most interesting organisation was this German organisation called FNL. I'll try and pronounce it. It stands for Vorgemeinschaft Nachhaltige Landwirtschaft, which means, roughly, which means the organisation for the promotion of sustainable agriculture. Now, this is a pretty powerful organisation in Germany, but it works in the background. It's undergone a bit of a name change since I visited it too, but what they do is they have the backing of almost the entire agriculture industry in Germany. The member organisations put in funds from, I think the minimum membership fee is about €1,000, but the big players, the likes of Bayer and BASF, put in six-figure sums each year to fund this organisation. It's a small team, 5-6 people. They go away, they do a lot of research, a lot of work on getting numbers and stats together about agriculture. But they also created little things like Schweinmobile and Kuhmobile, which are pop-up piggeries and a pop-up dairy. And they take them to the people. So they take them to Berlin, to the big cities, and they'll sit there for 2 or 3 weeks with a real bona fide farmer operating them. So people can walk past in their lunch hour and see a dairy or see a piggery, how it works, where their food comes from, and actually have the chance to engage with the farmer and ask them questions about why they do certain things, how the pigs get looked after. And the response they get from this is quite phenomenal. They tell me they get hundreds of thousands of visitors walking past these in a couple of weeks. So it's a great way to get the message to the people rather than trying to bring the people to agriculture. They did take went to great pains to explain to me though that they don't consider themselves the fire brigade. They don't wish to sort the big arguments out, to fight the fights in agriculture. They leave that to the lobby groups, who are also members of the organisation. But they provide a technical resource of information for those guys. So they've got information, they've got a scientific council which builds that library of information, and a bit like the NFU in the UK, they've become the trusted source of information about agriculture. So again, just the way that works, that's become quite a powerful thing in Germany. They also have a great program called Grünwoche, which is Green Week. They run in February every year, and that is massive. They have it's a giant showcase of agriculture with real animals, real cows, pigs, all the latest machinery and all those sorts of things. People come along to see that, and they bring agriculture ministers from all around the EU there as well, so they're getting engagement with it at the political level as well. So a powerful organisation, and one of the things I liked about it, I won't talk too long about it, is the structure of it. It's quite simple, but typically German, very well organised. They have 44 member organisations, most of agribusiness in Germany, and expert committees which then filter through the issues that are coming through to a steering committee who decide what action to take and what issues they're going to run with at the time to try and engage with consumers and politicians. It's a respected organisation. It's a model that I think we could adopt in Australia, or adapt, I should say, based on some of the other programs I've seen as well. And I think we have an opportunity here to create something like this in Australia to unite our agriculture industries without treading on the toes of lobby groups and other farmer organisations who can still exist to do the job they do. So out of all that, I guess to try and distill it down to a few key points, it is, as I said before, an issue which requires all of agriculture, fisheries and forestry, we're all the same industry, to cooperate. That's a challenge in Australia. We are pretty free-thinking people. It's hard to unite us together. However, I think an organisation similar to that of FNL and others, where it doesn't do the lobbying, it's not treading on anyone's toes in that space, it's operating in the background almost, just to promote agriculture. I think there's an opportunity to do that, and that is basically because this problem transcends political and ideological differences. It doesn't matter what you believe politically or what your ideology is. If you're an organic farmer or a conventional grain farmer, that doesn't matter. We're still producing food. So we need to work together. It's going to require capital, and it's going to require a lot of willpower to bring to the table to try and implement this model, and it needs to be done very soon. I think as an aside, I think actually Nuffield is not a bad vehicle to begin a process like this. I think it's well respected in the agriculture community, and it already brings those sort of people to the table. So perhaps I'd like to see it have a facilitatory role in this. So that's about all I wanted to say on the topic. I just wanted to run through a couple of quick things about the Global Focus program, which we all do as Nuffield Scholars. It's a great opportunity. It is hard work, and there are the older members among us who struggle sometimes to keep up a little bit. So Chris just needed a little bit of a rest at this time. But at the same time, we all become pretty close by the end of it, and we're able to rest wherever we want. There are a few cultural differences that you can imagine travelling around different countries, and I'll never forget when one of the New Zealand scholars, Mel, just up here, who ordered a lemon lime bitters in a US pub, and was delivered lemon lime bitters. Thanks very much, folks.